disrupted.
America that I fought for.
Weird thing to happen. Hello, one and all. Welcome to this edition of Kitz Corner. It's been a fantastic day so far. So if you're a Canadian like myself, you've really been fooled, especially on April Fool's Day. You feel like an exact fool. If you're still supporting the government, especially the current administration, and thinking that they're combating climate change, whether you agree with it or not, regardless, the carbon tax scheme continues to infiltrate, continues to fest on to people, and it's just getting worse and worse. As you've heard, and we've warned on this channel, that as of April 1st, prices are going to skyrocket and increase, on top of the cost of living, on top of all the other taxes that you're paying for, and on top of the mass inflation that we're still dealing with to this day. The carbon tax, the emissions pricing is escalating to astronomical numbers. And there is no real scientific analysis to investigate to prove the fact that the carbon taxes are working, that they're putting to investment into making, nature better. And the fact that I knew this was a scam when they demonized farmers and agriculturalists, who are the most environmentally conscious people known to mankind. It's the most ecological profession you can have in this world, to be a farmer. And they're demonizing them for pollution and making havoc with the planet, instead of the jet class and the people that are causing the most emissions. They're not going after the military-industrial complex that is the most pollutant force in the globe. They're not looking at that. They're not investigating that. They're not demonizing the, Justin Trudeau jetting off to his multi-vacations a year. None of that matters, but they're going to demonize the people that are the most at one with nature. And that's how I knew this was kind of a scam from the get-go. And then you realize people like, Al Gore was just a liar, and how he scammed people into this, that the WEF was scamming people into this, and how Greta Thunberg, who at start I thought was just a decent young lady, who's now turned into a psyops. She is definitely the psyop character that the elite is using to perpetrate this scheme. And to show you how much how much they have lucratively collected from the backs of ordinary Canadians. Look at this, for example. So the Canadian Independent pointed this out, and it says, watch, Canadian Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance Chrystia Freeland in the Finance Committee today refuses to answer how much her government has collected in carbon tax when called out on $2 billion. That has not been accounted for. She claims it was going to small businesses shortly. It's okay. It's going to you shortly. That's the magical defense that they use to initialize people into this carbon tax. That it's okay. It's okay, because if we triple charge you for the basic necessities, then down the road, you may get something back. And I literally had someone, defending that. Someone actually attacked me by saying, hey, we have to have this carbon tax because in the end, you're going to get rebates back, and the rebates are going to be higher. And I had to explain to them. I had to explain to an older person from a smart-ass Canadian podcaster. I had to explain to them that the incentive you get back is not the same as the much you're putting in. For example, if I had to pay $100 into this carbon tax, and you're saying that I'm going to get an incentive later on, that rebate could only be maybe a few dollars compared to the $100 I paid towards that. And why exactly is the burden of working class Canadians to pay for the pollutants of people like Chrystia Freeland, who are jetting around the country, who are jet sailing to different nations around the world, who are putting out the most emissions and causing the most environmental harm? Why is it the burden of ordinary Canadians that are just trying to live normal lives, heat their house, pay for food, go to work and get back home? Why is the burden of ordinary Canadians for the actions of people that are lecturing us? So this is how I figured out that a lot of this has to be a scam. Now, whether you agree with it or not on the whole idea of climate change and environmental impact and pollution, again, regardless on that, the carbon tax is not the solution. Carbon tax is not the solution to get us to a greener planet. Listening to Al Gore and listening to people at the World Economic Forum, they are not the solution to this. They are at all the solution for this. You are steering into the wrong direction. So here's how this went down when Chrystia Freeland was asked how much her government scanned people for this.
Mr. Chair, Minister, how much has the government collected in carbon taxes since you implemented it?
I didn't hear the last question. The last part of the question.
How much has the government collected in carbon taxes since it was implemented?
So thanks for the question, and it gives me an opportunity to be really clear about the price on pollution.
That right there should already be a tell. Thank you for the question. I'm going to make this very clear as possible. When anyone answers a question like that, that's when you know the red flag should be up to realize that, oh God, you're going to get a crap load of manure sent to you. Manure that's actually beneficial to the planet, more so than anything that Chrystia Freeland suggests. Farmers are an asset to the planet. They're not a threat. They're an asset. And in fact, the more CO2 you have in the air, the more greening you have with the planet. And that's not me saying that. That was a NASA article. That was a NASA study that proved that. And we have seen it impacted when it comes to vegetation, when it comes to trees. And I said that it's so ludicrous that we're wasting away trillions of dollars investing in technology to capture the carbon when trees have been doing it for centuries. Trees, the most natural product, the most natural carbon capture technology we have is trees. We already have it implemented. And the thing about trees compared to a carbon capture device is trees provide oxygen, which is better for us. So again, there's a lot of solutions that we could be implementing when it comes to the environment. We're not doing any of that. But we will charge people triple at the gas pump. We will charge people quadruple to get their groceries. We will charge people more than that to heat their homes. And anyway, by the way, love the Ukrainian little symbol there. Definitely know she's at place being the Canadian leader. You have another country's lapel. Anyway, here's her response.
Is revenue neutral. All
Sorry,
the
Minister,
money that is collected,
it was a pretty specific
all
question.
the money that is
Just
collected
the number, how much
goes back directly to Canadians.
I only have limited
That
time,
is
Minister.
the key point.
How much has your government collected in carbon taxes?
So I love the argument that her and Justin Trudeau say that, hey, the money that we collected goes back to Canadians. And if that was the argument, let's say hypothetically that was true. If that's the argument, why even have this tax? Why even collect money from Canadians if you know all of it's going to go back? Like, it is the dumbest thing ever. It's the dumbest thing. You would have to have zero brain cells to believe that lie. If everything that you put into the carbon tax is going to be implemented back, then why have the tax to begin with? Because she knows that's a lie. Everybody knows that's a lie. Anybody that has seen the carbon tax implemented and got those rebates, they know that that's a lie. That the rebates are a lot smaller than what you put in.
also an opportunity for me to point out that Manitoba families will be getting $1,200 this year.
Again, Minister, if I could just have the number, how much have you collected in carbon taxes?
The key point which Conservatives consistently are trying to keep from Canadians is that the price on pollution is completely
Again,
revenue neutral.
Minister, it's a very
So now she just jumps the goalpost. She completely jumps and dodges the question. The thing that Conservatives are keep bringing up, no, he's asking you what the number is. He's asking you directly, what is the number that your administration, has collected through the start of this of the carbon tax? What is the exact number? This has nothing to do with the Conservatives. This has nothing to do with any other political party. This is about you implementing this tax. How much have you raised? And she refuses to answer. Refuses to answer. Just completely jumps ship to a completely dodging remark. And she says that you're going to get what you paid into. Again, that's an absurd argument. If that's the case, why even have this tax? If I'm getting back what I paid in, then what's the point of this? What's the point of any of this? But it's good to know that families in Manitoba are about to get the incentive of the equivalency of a bachelor apartment here in Ontario. Like, oh, you're going to get that one-time check of $1,200. Woohoo! Maybe some of your rent gets paid off. Woo! Don't you feel special? And under their choosing. Yay! Don't you just feel wonderful? Do you feel so loved? But nobody actually knows where this money is going towards. Because they will tell you that it's going towards Canadians. It's going towards rebates. I thought it would go towards initiatives to actually make the climate better, as they proposed when the carbon tax first started. But that was a big, giant lie. And to further on that cause, and tell you exactly how this is a lie, here's the environmental minister. This is Steve Gilbert, or Gilbert. I don't know how to pronounce his last name. I'm not French. But here's the environmental minister on CTV News here, on the Question Period program on CTV. And he was asked about where this money was going towards. And listen to what exactly the initiative is on this carbon tax. Why exactly we are collecting this money from working class Canadians that already can't afford the basic necessities of living. Why exactly we're doing this.
Can you explain to Canadians watching, Minister, why it was okay to pause the price on carbon for home heating oil, but not for this upcoming increase as of April 1st?
So one of the things that the host asked was about why there was a pause earlier on home heating. That right around the beginning of winter here in Canada, there was a pause on carbon tax. And that was right around the time when they were building up the aggression over in Ukraine. They were shutting off the Russian oil transfer to Europe, and that's when the Nord Stream pipeline exploded. They were putting a pause on home heating because they know that there was going to be a manufactured disaster in heating the homes of Canadians. They knew that that people couldn't afford to heat their homes, so they put on this pause, this little tiny pause, that you're able to heat your homes. Well, why is that not implemented now? Why did all of a sudden on April 1st, not kidding you, April Fool's Day, did they go from a pause to tripling the carbon tax? So here's his response.
So the very reason for putting a price on pollution, and it's been done before, and not just for climate change, but for other environmental challenges.
By the way, it has been done before, but not succeeded. I just want to remind people, they tried to do this in France, and that was when the Yellow Vest movement started. They tried to put a tax on people's gasoline. They try to put a tax on pollution for ordinary working people. It didn't turn out so well in France. It didn't turn out so well in other countries. Why exactly do we get the burn on this? When do we get our yellow vest movement? When does someone actually step up and realize what a scam this is? But here's where they're telling you why they did it.
Is that you want to incentivize change in behavior for companies, industrial organizations, but also individuals. What we found out with home heating oil is that the vast majority, in fact, of people who are still using home heating oil in Canada, and there are more people in my home province of Quebec than in all of Atlantic Canada, for example, that still use it, but tend to be lower to middle income Canadians who don't have the money to make the switch for less polluting form of home heating oil.
So he just told you the reason for all this carbon tax is to control you. It's behavioral change. So that the more money you get taxed, you can afford a more expensive way to heat your home that you can't even afford to begin with. Like, this is backwards, upside down insanity, what they're projecting here. This is, again, it's the same scenario when it comes to EV vehicles. You can't afford to fill up your tank as is, so they want you to buy an electric vehicle that's triple the amount of your already existing vehicle. Something you already can't afford, and you can't afford to fill your car up as is. They want you to buy the more expensive thing that you can't even afford to begin with. It's the dumbest argument to be made about this. People don't have that option. They don't have that option. And cost of living's already skyrocketing. Inflation's already skyrocketing. There's massive crisis after crisis after crisis. So putting a carbon tax on lower middle income people, he just said it, it's going towards lower working class people of Canada, is not going to change anything. Because they already can't afford to change the way to greener technology, even though it's controversial whether it is greener technology. If you look at electric vehicles and the manufacturing process of making the batteries, not really great for the environment. It's not actually beneficial for people, surprisingly. So instead of actually making it more affordable to make that switch, they're going to tax you for doing the due diligence of just the basics. You're heating your home. You're going to be extra charged until you pay for something you can't afford to begin with. It's literally the dumbest argument to be made about this. The dumbest argument to say about this. And there's still people that will defend this and say, well, you still get the rebates back. You're not going to get enough to afford to change the heating of your home. You're not going to be able to afford an electric vehicle. And even if you do get an electric vehicle, they a lot of problems with them. We saw what happened with Chicago with all the Teslas. You get an electric vehicle, and with Canadians, with the winter here in Canada, good luck. Like, this is the dumbest argument to be made about the carbon tax. And all it is mindless extraction of ordinary Canadians to do nothing. Because they didn't even say there's no initiative to actually put it into, planting trees, investing into more farming and more agriculture, putting it towards, national parks, anything that would actually be a plausible solution. Incentivize hemp manufacturing. That's something I've been suggesting for a while. But no. They're never going to do anything like that. But they're going to extract money from you You already impoverished Canadians. They're going to take all that money so that they can manipulate you to think about changing your behavior for the sake of the planet. And I just want to add to that, when do they change their minds? When do they get the behavioral initiative to stop riding their private jets all over the place? When do they get the initiative to stop taking the motorcade everywhere? When do they get the initiative to stop funding illegal wars around the world that's blowing up country after country after country, that's mass destructive on the environment? When does that take effect? When do we get that behavioral change? But some ordinary Joe or Jane that's already feeling the burden of living in Canada now has to feel triple that annoyance, triple that burden, because they're not living accordingly to your expert advice of behavioral change. Because apparently if you change your mind, it's better for the planet. Instead of planting trees, gardening, using hemp material, homesteading, like, these are valuable options that I've seen other people have done, and it's successful. They will never tell you that. But they'll tell you that farming is bad, cows are bad, go eat bugs, and we'll charter around while you live in hell. It's a scam. It's an obvious scam. The carbon tax is a scam. And again, regardless how you feel about the overall environmental impact, it doesn't hold a candle to the fact that Canada, and it's one of the only nations really in the world that's still implementing a carbon tax. You don't see it much in the United States. You don't see it in Mexico. You don't see it in China. You don't see it in Russia. You don't see it anywhere else in the world. But here, we're feeling triple the burden on April 1st, April Fool's Day. And my question is, at this point, is when is Canada going to have its Yellow Vest movement? When are people going to have a convoy, not just with COVID, but a convoy to really call all this out? Call the attention of the authoritarian fascist dictatorship that our government is colliding towards. When do we get our nation back? When do we get Canada to be Canada again? When is that going to happen? Because it's going to get worse. It's going to get worse. Anyway, let's hear the rest of this.
Home heating, which is why we decided to put a pause specifically on this, because home heating oil is the most expensive, it's the most inefficient, and it's the most polluting way of heating your home.
And I do take your point, Minister, that as far as volume.
So they already can't afford home heating oil. So what are we going to do? We're going to tax it more. And then you're going to think about getting something even more expensive. Do you see how dumb this is? Do you see how dumb this is? Why are they not making an incentive to actually make it affordable for people to make that jump? They're not doing that. They're not doing that.
Volume goes, there are more of those homes outside of Atlantic Canada, but as a portion of the types of heating that's used, it's far greater in Atlantic Canada than it is in other parts of the country. And the Atlantic MP surrounding the Prime Minister, when he made that announcement, I think speaks to that fact. But at this point in time, given the affordability struggles, like you highlight many of those using home heating oil are facing, would it not be worth considering pressing pause in this instance?
No, it wouldn't.
That's kind of a bit of a daring move to ask from CTV, the host there. I mean, a pause is nothing, but at least it's suggesting that this is insane. At least there's a tiny, tiny, tiny bit of, callback. A tiny bit of pushback on this. which is, that's the state of our journalism here in Canada. Like, it's minuscule how much, journalistic integrity we have now. So it comes down to people like me in their basement with the Shoestring Budget podcast, telling you all this. Just making observations.
Because we can't put a pause on climate change. And what Pierre Poilievre never talks about is the fact that people right now, 8 out of 10 Canadians, families, get more money back than they pay in carbon pricing. So the richest among us don't, the people who pollute the most, but 8 out of 10 Canadian families. And that has been confirmed by the Parliamentary Budget Officer.
And again, it's still less than what you put into it. And this still the argument's made. If you're getting back what you've put in already, then what is the point of this tax? What is the point of this if we're just putting in money to the government and then you're saying that we're going to get back, all of it back? More than we put in. What exactly is the point? It makes absolutely no sense. But it makes sense to the fact that now they can use this order to basically impoverish more people that already are struggling to this day on mass inflation, cost of living, everything skyrocketing, and now they could feel, the soul searching of tripling their cost because they feel like it's a good deed towards the planet. And this is all being suggested by higher up officials, by the jet class, by the criminal elites that impose the most harm to the environment compared to the ordinary family. Because Justin Trudeau's, multi vacations he has a year has put more pollutants in the air than a regular family has done in the entire year of Canada. That's without saying. But it's not going to change their ways. So why is it a burden on us? It just makes absolutely no sense. And like I said, France tried it. It failed. Other countries have tried it. It failed. And you know why it failed? Because people rose up against it. And I'm just wondering when it's going to be our time. When are we going to say enough is enough and have our yellow vest movement? Because I think it's more than time that we got together as Canadians and fight back so we can keep a Canada alive for people. Get back this country to the Canada that everyone loved and deserves, and the true patriot love that should be forever entangled with this nation. For everybody to love and enjoy and be part of this amazing country that is now just crumbling because of buffoons and authoritarian imperialists like him and Justin Trudeau and Chrystia Freeland that don't give a crap about the country, its citizens, or nature in general.